So we talked about Wake Forest. We talked about NC State. We talked about UNC. Now it's on to the team that everybody thought was going to be the best in the Atlantic Coast Conference in this 24-25 season. We're talking, of course, about John Shire's Duke Blue Devils. This team is loaded with talent, maybe too much talent at times, maybe competing talent, but this team is pretty good. 12-2 overall. They are 4-0, already a lot of conference games under their belt. They are a strong basketball team that is looking to just keep pushing on 4-2 in quad one games. Two tough losses, but they've learned from that. Right now, David Glenn, John Shire has a lot of work to do, but it's fun work because his team is winning. They're just trying to enhance.
Yeah, Mike, and I'm going to leave most, as they say in Congress, I'll leave the most of my time here on the floor to the gentleman from originally New Jersey, meaning Coach Keating. And my coach style question for him is, how do you manage asking, for example, Tyrese Proctor, who was no doubt about it, the starting point guard at Duke last year with astronomical assist numbers? How do you in the offseason go to him and say, you're not really our functional starting point guard anymore? How do you sign Caleb Foster that Mike, you and I talked to in Charlotte at ACC Media Day? How do you start the season with him at the point guard and then in the early season essentially demote him and say, you're not really our functional point guard anymore? The Tulane transfer, Sion James, is not really a point guard, but he's going to be that for us. And then Cooper Flagg's going to be this point forward who leads the team in assists. As much as I endorse everything you just described about Duke, they are one of the best teams in the nation. They have one of the best freshman classes, and it's not just in the rankings, like it is showing up on the court in the form of Cooper Flagg and Con Knipple and the big guy, Common Malowich. There's everything you'd want in terms of that blend of talent, experience, depth. But even on good teams, Steve Logan, the football coach, would often say, even when you're winning, you have problems sometimes. And at Duke, I saw last year that there was not great chemistry in their locker room, with Kyle Filipowski being such a strange guy and his older girlfriend and his detachment from the team. And I'm serious, that messed with their chemistry. And you could see it at the end of the season on the court. They just did not look at him the same way they looked at their others. This year's different, but everybody has an individual agenda. We've all heard the saying, it's amazing what you can accomplish when no one cares about who gets the credit. But Coach Keating would know as well as anyone, like, even when you win, somebody's concerned that he's not getting enough minutes, not getting enough touches, not doing the role he thought he was going to do, and that messes with their long-term plans for their professional future. Just because I agree how good Duke is, and I'll leave my other thoughts about the Blue Devils for our next show, I want to hear Coach Keating's thoughts about even managing those challenges, even while you have a record that you mostly like and analytics that you mostly like.
I think John's ability and the Duke administration ability to get Rachel Baker in place before all this is now paying huge dividends. John doesn't worry about any of those things. I tell you one thing that even from a peripheral, you really don't hear, or I haven't dug into, and David, maybe you're more privy to this than I am, is how much each.
Oops.
Oh,
How much each? Start back from there.
yep. I think one thing that you don't hear a lot about with the Duke players is how much each of them are making in the market right now. I mean, last year at this time and the year before, it was Baycot's getting $1 million. RJ's going to get $2 million this year. Like, I don't hear any of that noise here locally, even from alums or people that are passive fans. Like, oh, Cooper Flagg, he's making 2.5 this year. Like, Knipple's getting 40,000 for every time he hits 7-3. Like, there's no dynamic of the outside noise that affects inside basketball now. And I'm telling you, John don't even worry about that. You can just tell in his demeanor, and this is a coach looking at a coach. You don't see the stress of NIL on John's face at all. And maybe Rachel Seton Hall. I've known Rachel Baker since she was a little girl. I mean, Rod Baker was her father was one of our assistant coaches at Seton Hall. Like, she came up the ranks, did a great job in the youth scene at Nike, and that relationship helped get her that spot. I think she's the unsung hero of why John's able to manage this roster properly. You know, you mentioned this last week, the Tulane transfer, James. He's the perfect Batman or Robin to this team's Batman. Here's a fifth-year guy from Tulane, 14 points a year, built like a you-know-what house, and he's a guy that can pick up the slack for you because he's been there and done that, and he's a man. And now he's playing with the best player who's still a boy. Super talented. Only flaw is that he's not really shooting the ball that well from deep, but he's now becoming this point forward, and that he's so talented and gifted. And Flagg can be that type of personality, be that type of guy. They have the talent. And I think the caveat in all this, to be honest with you, is it's easier now for John to pull these guys in from a basketball standpoint and his staff and say, hey, guys, we're trying to win a national championship now. We've removed all the noise. You are not going to have any of those players, whether it's by instruction or just by nature, going to any coach or anyone on the staff, the basketball staff, hey, my car lease is coming up. Is my money coming in? Like, hey, Leonard, hey, Coach Hamilton, where's that 250 you promised me? I mean, like, it's kind of sounds elementary, but I'm telling you, it has everything to do with why Duke is having this success as their talent, and their talent is able to be what it is. Now, nothing's perfect, and I'm sure they have their own issues, but again, John just didn't go to the game at SMU because of an illness. They beat the top half of the team in the SMUs 11-2 by 25. The talent is there. It's meshing well. It's accepted younger kids. You've got the guys that have been in the program that are kind of accepting their role. Role acceptance now is at a higher level of importance than ever before. And David, you mentioned Coach Wooden's, statement. It's the only thing I had up on the wall, coincidentally enough, in my locker room. It's amazing what gets accomplished and no one cares who gets the credit. This team is a microcosm of that in this day and age more than any other. Look, let's not forget about Auburn had a kid who basically just quit on the team during a game last week or last month. Now they're talking about how they're going to run roughshod and go right to the national championship a month later. So everybody deals with it differently, right? But in the case of Duke, the way they're dealing with it, that success and the fact that they're a very good and maybe underrated at this point because of their offensive firepower, they're a very good defensive team. Their length, their strength, their ability to defend is going to catch. Defense will travel. Defense will be the deciding factor where they can win 4 games and get to the Final Four in April.
Mike, my quick PS there, and then I'll let you wrap it up. Number one, Jon Scheyer was a little skeptical of the transfer portal when it started. He was a little Dabo Sweeney-ish when it came to the volume and necessity of transfers. To his credit, and this is kind of like your point, Mike, about Carolina sometimes closing in on itself with its way being the only way. Jon Scheyer quickly pivoted from skepticism towards the transfer portal to basically saying, we can still be Duke and recruit the #1 high school class in the nation, but then supplement it with unselfish. Why wouldn't Sion James want to be a secondary player on a possible national champion rather than averaging 20 in obscurity at Tulane, right? But you have to find that guy. You got to communicate with that guy. You got to make sure he's coming in with the right expectations. So it's Sion James in his role, and it's Mason Gillis in his role. And Duke fell in love with Malik Brown of Syracuse just by watching him on tape while preparing for a conference opponent. And, of course, playing against him and seeing how he rebounds and defends and is unselfish and high field goal percentage. Just fell in love with him. Get him out of – so now you got 3 of your top 8 or whatever are these unselfish, I know who I am type guy. And then I just had to squeeze in. I don't know how often this is. Coach Keating might have references off the top of his head. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of TV graphics along this lines. But in almost 40 years of covering college basketball, I cannot think of many people who led their team in points and rebounds and assists and steals and blocked shots. Mm-hmm. The same guy on the single team. Now, he may not hold on all five of those because a couple are close. But Cooper Flagg of Duke right now is leading in all five of those categories. Some teams have five different guys leading in those five categories. He's not a perfect player, as Coach said. He's still not a well-rounded perimeter shooter, et cetera. But, man, this is why Coach K raved about Cooper Flagg in the on the court, off the court, leadership, passion, intensity, toughness, intangibles, but also, wow, what a skill set. I guess we'll see names of others who went 5 for 5, but wow, I can't think of anybody. And I'm sure they're out there, but I look forward to seeing those TV graphics because I'm fascinated to know who else is on that list.
So does Duke make the Final Four, guys? We know they're going to make the tournament. We don't have to go through the Wake State Carolina thing right there. Duke's going to the field of 68. How deep do they go?
I like Duke to be the only non-SEC team to really have a legit shot. I mean, I think season ends today, prognosticate. I really like what Kentucky shows and how Mark's coaching that group. Duke, Kentucky, Auburn, and an SEC team to be named later. Probably Tennessee. Depends on the bracket.
No, I feel similarly. Duke is the best team in the ACC. There's no doubt about it. It'll be fun to see who tries to hang with them in the standings. At least there are some candidates with Clemson and Pitt and Carolina and maybe somebody else we'll see. But that is the ACC's best ticket to take a long ride. There's no doubt about it. And we'll just have to reassess come March, given injuries and chemistry and other things that can happen over these next couple of months.